So Pitt plays tonight, penultimate game of the regular season. Panthers at NC State. That's a 7 o'clock tip-off game in Raleigh or wherever it is that NC State plays. Of course, that'll conflict with our regularly scheduled Panther-Lair show, our live Panther-Lair show that we do every Wednesday night here at 8:30 on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So obviously a 7 o'clock basketball game is going to conflict with that a little bit, but there's always a good solution, and the solution tonight is we will do it as a post-game show. So whenever Pitt NC State ends tonight, we will be live right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com to talk about it for a little bit. Don't know if we'll go a full hour, hour and a half, 45 minutes, whatever it takes to talk about this game, which I sort of predicted yesterday might end up being a 73-67 Pitt win with Jalen Lowe playing 38 minutes and Ishmael Leggett playing 38 minutes and, no real changes, even though we advocated for some yesterday. Not that our advocacy of, the aforementioned advocacy would, likely inspire any real changes. But we'll see what happens tonight, and we will talk about it after the game. As always, if you want to make sure you don't miss any of our Pitt video content, our live streams, our Morning Pitt videos, anything like that, just like this video and subscribe to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. That way you will be locked in for all of it when we change up the schedule on the live show or when we go live at an unannounced time. I mean, we're going to be live tonight after the game. Whether that's 9:05 or 9:15 or 8:59, whatever it might be, we will be live after the game, and you can make sure you don't miss it by subscribing to youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Also, if you typically get the audio podcast, I did want to say this before we jump in. If you typically get the audio podcasts on Apple or Spotify or wherever it may be, look, we're having some technical issues with the uploads there. I'm trying to get it resolved, trying to find some solutions to a few of these things, and so I apologize that those have been lacking a little bit. But as always, you can check it out right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm not going to lie, we make more money off of this than we do off the audio podcast. That's not why the audio podcasts have been inconsistent lately. It's more of a technical issue, but it is true. There's revenue to be made on YouTube that we don't necessarily get out of the podcast. Either way, you can always find it right here. And you can watch it through your browser on Panther-Lair.com. You can watch it on YouTube at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. There's all kinds of places to check it out. So we appreciate if you do that. And of course, as always, we appreciate if you subscribe. But this is the best place to watch it. As for the Pitt game tonight, well, you might be surprised about the best place to watch that game. And you might be surprised about why it's the best place to watch that game. Why is Pitt on ESPN News tonight? Let's talk about it here on the Morning Pitt, the Wednesday edition on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Yeah, it's the Wednesday edition of the Morning Pitt here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. I'm Chris Peak from Panther-Lair.com. You see the website below, Panther-Lair.com. And as we've been saying, we moved to a new network. We're part of the 24/7 Sports Network now. Very excited about this. We've had a lot of great content this week already from our team at Panther-Lair.com and, of course, from the national team at 24/7 Sports. And we'd love for you to come check it out. And to sort of entice you, we're giving you a special offer right now, 75% off your first year at Panther-Lair.com. Look, that's a great deal. It's like $25, $26 a year or something like that. 75% off. If you can get 75% off anything, you should take advantage of it. And certainly when it's the best Pitt coverage that you're going to find. So go check it out, Panther-Lair.com. It's up in the upper left-hand corner. You'll see a little link to the promo of 75% off. This is a limited time offer. It's not going to last forever. So if you want to take advantage of it, now is the time. And of course, if you do, you'll get to be part of our live game thread tonight during the Pitt NC State game. It's always fun to sort of it's like hanging out with a bunch of your best Pitt buddies or being in a group chat with a bunch of your best Pitt buddies. We get hundreds of posts throughout the game, spanning the wide range of emotions that come with watching a sporting event and certainly come with watching this Pitt basketball team play this season. Now, if you're going to watch the game tonight, you might have noticed that it's on ESPN News. How did Pitt end up on ESPN News tonight? Well, funny story about that. This game that was supposed to be on the ACC network, and I think as of yesterday afternoon, it was still listed on Pitt's website as being on the ACC network. Turns out ACC network was planning on broadcasting the ACC women's basketball tournament tonight. Hey, that seems like an important thing to put on TV. conference tournament. That's a big deal. But oopsies, we also agreed to broadcast Pitt NC State. Oh, what are we going to do? How does this happen? What is this how does this conference let that happen? And I mean, I can't sit here and blame Jim Phillips for the poor decision making of the ACC network, but I mean, come on, guys, run a professional operation here. I mean, like, are you not aware that the ACC women's basketball tournament is happening, and you're not aware that you've got this Pitt NC State game scheduled? And I'm not even saying like, oh yeah, they have to bump Pitt NC State for ACC women's basketball, or boy, it's really a reflection on Pitt and NC State that they're bumping them for women's basketball. I mean, that's not even the point. The point is like, hello, wake up. But unfortunately, it feels like it's par for the course with this conference. The news came out yesterday that the ACC is settling with Florida State and Clemson. You know, Florida State and Clemson throwing their toys all around the room, clamoring and yelling and screaming and kicking the sides of their crib, trying to make a big to-do about how they should be allowed to leave the ACC. And we get all the media stooges over the last 2 years or 3 years or however long it is saying Florida State's lawyers have figured it out. They didn't figure out anything. They never figured out anything. And we said this all along. I mean, like, I don't have inside sources at the top levels of the ACC's legal team or Florida State's board of trustees or anything like that. But every time I saw one of these guys from Tallahassee reporting about how Florida State had figured out a way to get out of the ACC, I was like, really? Because I'm sort of the mind that if Florida State had figured out a way to get out of the ACC, they would have been gone. They would have left. But instead of leaving, they just kept talking about it. And Florida State just kept talking and talking and talking. And this is the other thing, too. If you figured something out, if you know a way to get out, you're not talking about it. You just do it. And the ones who are talking about it are the ones who haven't figured anything out. The ones who are talking about it are the ones that don't actually have a solution. It's like with these head coaching searches. You know, and like Bill Belichick is an exception because he ended up actually getting the North Carolina job. But the guys who talk about it are typically not the guys who are actually involved or actually not going to get the job. Usually, if you have a real possibility of pulling something like that off, of getting out of the ACC, of getting a head coaching job, whatever it may be, you tend to stay quiet. Now, Clemson did the whole, keep your mouth shut and, be thought a fool, then open it and, prove them right. They just stayed quiet on the sidelines. And quite frankly, they didn't need to talk. They could just let Florida State be the class clown out there trying to draw the attention to see how the ACC was going to let them out. Because they figured it out. Their lawyers found a way out. They didn't find a way out of anything. All they did was be enough of a pain for the ACC that the ACC eventually capitulated and said, okay, fine. We will give more money to the teams that achieve at a higher level. We'll give more money to teams that, draw bigger viewership numbers. And we'll give more money to teams that invest more in their, athletics and athletic departments and athletic programs. Now, Florida State doesn't exactly get much out of the Success Initiative because they stunk last year. But you know what? A lot of people still tuned in to watch that train wreck. And certainly Florida State has invested a lot of money in athletics, so they'll get something out of it as well. Florida State, Miami, and Clemson are also going to get a sweetheart deal to play Notre Dame more often, which guess what that's going to do? Juice the ratings numbers. So guess who gets more out of that viewership initiative? Shout out to Florida State and Clemson and Miami. For some reason, you get lumped in here, Miami. What have you done, Miami? Like, Michael Irvin's not walking through that door. Sean Taylor is not walking through that door. All you've done is fall flat on your face year after year after year and tell everyone about how good you are and tell everyone about how the U is back. And then you step on a rake. Miami gets lumped in there like they're relevant or like they matter. Like, we keep wanting to believe that Miami matters, but the Miami fan base doesn't care about Miami, and Miami always blows it by the end of the year, so it really doesn't matter. They were well on their way to the playoffs this year, and then they lost 2 out of their final 3 games, right? And then the bowl game when their quarterback quit at halftime. But yeah, you guys are important. You guys matter. You haven't, soiled yourselves every year for the past 20, 30, how many years? How long has it been since Miami actually mattered for an entire season or, God forbid, 2 years in a row? But yeah, Miami should be lumped in here with Clemson and Florida State, who have actually won national championships, since my son was born in 2012. Miami, whatever. You know what? But this is what the ACC is desperate. The ACC doesn't want to become the Pac-12. The ACC or Pac-10 or Pac-8 or Pac-2. The ACC wants to try to hold on for dear life, and so they give these better deals to the schools that are going to draw more viewership. They give these better deals to the schools that are going to win more, and they give these better deals to the schools that are going to be, that are going to invest more in their programs. And so it holds it on. It holds it together. I think they've shortened the grant of rights, so now it's, instead of like another 10 or 11 years, of the grant of rights holding this conference together. They shortened it, I think, to 2030 or 2032, something like that. I forget the exact number that's come out. So they sort of capitulated on that as well. But guess what, ACC, this is what you're going to be doing for the foreseeable future, is capitulating. Okay, because if it's not Florida State and Clemson holding you over the fire, it's the SEC and the Big Ten. And that's what it'll come down to. And when you talk about the future, when you look at what's coming down the path of what college football, what the future holds for college football, what the future holds for college basketball, and what the future holds for the ACC specifically, it's largely out of your control. There's very little the ACC can do to assert itself or position itself, put itself in a position of strength or somehow have any considerable influence over its future. I mean, really, the opportunities for other programs to step up over the last 15 years have been largely wasted. Clemson has carried that banner. Florida State, because they're Florida State and they won a championship more than 10 years ago, they can count themselves in that group. But it's largely been Clemson carrying that banner, and nobody else has really done anything. Nobody else really takes it. Like, who else is serious? You talk about whether the ACC is a serious conference. Who else in the ACC is serious? Like, Clemson cares. Florida State cares. They're just in a weird spot, although I question how strongly their fan base cares when it seems like maybe their NIL program wasn't as strong as it needed to be. Because seriously, dude, DJU and Thomas Castellanos, these are the quarterbacks that you're going to pluck out of the portal over the last 2 years, where Mike Norvell has to give money back. But who else? Carolina could be a power if they actually took football seriously, and we'll see if this Bill Belichick experiment works out. I kind of feel like if you wanted to make a splash or really go big in elevating your program with a big-time hire, I think there were probably other options than Bill Belichick. I mean, couldn't you go get Pete Carroll or somebody? Like, I just don't know. I just don't know if that's going to fit. Even if he just surrounds himself with people who actually can coach college football, just don't know if it's going to fit. But Carolina could probably be a power in college football if they actually cared enough. Now, they're acting like they care enough, but I'm just not entirely convinced that they do. But who else? Miami, for one, Miami, I don't think their fan base cares. And they just, they fall flat on their face. At some point, you need to win. At some point, you need to have some success, like sustained success. You need to win a championship. You need to win the ACC. How about Miami? Instead of like sitting back telling us how great you are, why don't you go win the conference? I mean, I'm just spitballing here. Crazy ideas, I know. But how about you go win the conference? Miami claims that they take it seriously, and maybe they do, and they just are horrible at executing their plan. But, I mean, seriously, who takes sports seriously in this conference? Like, serious, and really wants to be at the highest level. Clemson, except, they ignored and, sort of proudly ignored the transfer portal for the last few years until finally they got on board with it this past year. Florida State claims they do. Miami claims they do. Carolina might be headed in that direction. Georgia Tech has gotten serious. Georgia Tech has gotten serious in the last year or two, but where were you, over the last 12 years, 14 years, where you're in a talent bed, a hotbed of talent in the Southeast and, generally in Georgia, more specifically in, really in the Atlanta area. You've got so much talent there. They can't all go to Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, and yet you still seem to fall flat on your face with all kinds of questionable decisions. Who else takes it seriously? Virginia Tech is woefully underfunded in NIL. Who else? This conference is an unserious conference because it's largely made up of athletic programs that are unserious. Now we'll see where Pitt goes from here. And when we talk about schools being serious, when we're talking about the athletic department and the university, but we're also talking about the fan base. And if you don't have a fan base that can support NIL to the level that it needs to be supported, then I question how serious you are. And should it be all put back on the fans to pay the players? No, of course not. It should be on the schools to pay the players. It should be on the conferences to pay the players. It should be the people who are actually reaping rewards from the efforts and labor of the players. They should be the ones who pay the players. But because they keep kicking that can down the road, it's hitting the fans on the head. And some fans have responded. Some fans have answered the call. Some fans have put up money. And there are schools around the country that are very serious about it, that their fan bases are very serious about it. Very few of those fan bases are in the Atlantic Coast Conference. So who takes it seriously? Really? Now, there's an opportunity. There's a chance here for all of these schools and all of their programs, particularly football and men's basketball, to take a giant leap forward. In some ways, even though the developments of the last 5 years have widened the gap between the haves and have-nots, in some ways it has created a bit of a footbridge to cross that gap. That you can, if you can rally the support, if you can get your fans on board, if you can generate enough funds, you can buy your way into success in a way that you really couldn't, not legally, 10 years ago. And so there's an opportunity there. But again, it comes back to that question. Who's serious? Like, the ACC has mortgaged its future, right? The ACC is on a clock now by shortening the grant of rights, or agreeing to shorten it, which appears to be the case. That wasn't in the ACC's press release. I think the guys at Yahoo Sports and probably Pete Thamel as well reported that. And so you've shortened the clock now, but you are on a clock, and you have to find a way to get more success out of your programs, make your programs more attractive, make your programs more interesting, and get increased viewership, and ultimately make your programs more lucrative. Make your programs an integral part of the college sports landscape. The ACC needs to be part of college football. You need to convince people that the ACC needs to be part of college football, that the ACC needs to be part of college basketball. And as you've taken away these legendary coaches, you made it much easier to disregard the ACC in college basketball. So even though the brand names are still there of Duke and Carolina, it's not Coach K, it's not Roy Williams, it's not Jim Boeheim. Like these legends of the game, these Hall of Fame coaches are no longer there, and you're losing a lot of your cachet as a result. Unless you can start winning. And the way to win is to buy your way into it. Now, Clemson and Florida State, when they take their binkies out, would tell you that they're not able to win because they don't have enough TV money to be able to compete. Well, find a way. Find a way. Because if you let your programs wither on the vine over the next 5 years, or however long it is before you can get out of this conference, maybe you're a little less appealing. Because, by the way, Clemson and Florida State, you know what the SEC has? They have a prominent program in the state of South Carolina. They have a prominent program in the state of Florida. And they don't really need you. Now, the Big Ten might be happy to take you. But the Big Ten's going to have to get a huge TV deal out of that, in order to justify spending more money or splitting the money into more teams. But who's serious? Is this conference serious? Are the schools in this conference serious? They have a choice to make. And look, it's not a easy open and shut case. There's a debate about how much you should really invest in college athletics. How much is too much? How far do you go? All of those things. But these are the questions the ACC is going to be asking itself over the next however many years, trying to solve this problem. But what they did yesterday with the announcement of the settlement, it probably feels like the first of many times that they'll be capitulating to someone, bending to someone else's demands, agreeing to someone else's terms. And really the best end game for the ACC is that a few years down the road, they're even, presented with demands or terms from the SEC and the Big Ten or the Big Ten, either one. That's like your best hope, is that one of those two conferences even makes demands of you, even sends you terms to agree to, even offers you the option to capitulate. Anyway, ESPN News tonight, Pitt, NC State, 7 o'clock tip-off. And post-game show right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe. And then, of course, check out the website, Panther-Lair.com. We would love to have you come and join the conversation. We'll have a live game thread going tonight during the Pitt-NC State game that everyone will be watching on ESPN News. And we'd love it if you tune in to join the thread as you watch the game. Have a little conversation. It's always fun to do that. So thanks for watching the video today. Tomorrow we'll probably get into a little bit of football talk. Spring camp starts next week, so we've got that to look forward to. We'll get into some Pitt football conversation. And, if there's anything additional. Well, no. We'll talk about the game, the Pitt-NC State game tonight on the post-game show. And then tomorrow we'll talk a little Pitt football. And then Friday we will have the mailbag. Our first mailbag as a member of the 24/7 Sports Network. So head over to Panther-Lair.com, go to the Between Fifth and Forbes message board, and you can post your questions in our mail time thread, and we'll answer as many as we can in the mailbag. So thanks for tuning in today. I hope you've had a good week. Enjoy the game tonight. Have a great Wednesday, and we will catch up with you tomorrow for the Morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.